Hello and welcome back to another Origins showcase. In this video we're going to be going over the Blade Warrior based Origin created by the Discord user known as Silver. The official version you should play this data pack Origin on is on 1.17, so that's the update it was created for, but you might be able to get it to work on 1.16.5, but beware, there's probably going to be some bugs to go along with it if you do attempt to do that. Another question probably in your mind right now, is this Origin themed after Technoblade? Potentially, but it's not exactly stated to be so in the Discord user's message when posting about this Origin in the Origin's Discord server. Either way, I found the idea of this Origin itself as well as some of the abilities to be quite interesting to say the least, so let's run through it. First off, as always, starting off with the description. A legendary warrior, only seen by his victims who's been training for years to finally acquire the ultimate level of combat. The people who escape his punishment call him the Blade. You see what I mean when I say there's a probability that this was inspired by Technoblade himself, but it's not exactly said if that is the case. Either way, it doesn't matter where the inspiration comes from, as long as the idea and the actual execution of it is somewhat interesting. Anyhow, moving into the abilities, you've got the Blade's Power. The Blade's Power, your mastery of fighting allows you to unleash the power of the warrior within inside you, your primary ability. Anyhow, when you press your primary ability key, you'll be given resistance, you'll be given regeneration and strength. You'll get regeneration and strength for around 8 seconds and get resistance for around 3 seconds, this ability having around a 30-second cooldown, after which you can use it again and have a brief moment of resistance and a slightly longer moment of strength and regen. Ultimately could be a pretty useful ability when in the middle of fighting against a bunch of mobs or PvPing against a bunch of other players. It could be really useful just to give you a slight boost in a critical situation where you need it. Either way, moving into your next ability, you've got Blade's Gift. When facing obstacles, your body allows you to boost 15 blocks forward without taking any form of fall damage. This is your secondary ability. Now okay, this ability has a lot of quirks to run with it. There's a lot of little bits and pieces that make it a little bit confusing when you think about it at first, especially by reading the default description. First off, you can still take fall damage in general as a Minecraft player. You can still take fall damage after this ability is worn off completely as well. After, like, let's say you fly into the air, the ability wears out and you have to fall back down to the ground at the same time, you will still take fall damage in there. But if you're using the ability and you take fall damage to end the ability when it's still moving you, then you won't take as much fall damage, because you still take fall damage. It isn't exactly truthful in how it says there, you still take a form of fall damage, just very little in comparison. But this ability allows you to jump a fair bit of distance, you can move forward faster, you can jump, go down, which you can do a bunch of different things with this ability. It just all depends on where you're facing. Practically, wherever you face is wherever you get boosted towards around 15 blocks. This does mean if you hit something, it will end the ability and you'll fall to whatever level it is to get to ground, so you can still take fall damage, and that is just something to keep in mind. But hopefully that's enough for you to understand how this ability works. Anyhow, moving into the next ability, you've got Deathly Touch. When you hit a mob with your blade, it will cause them to wither away. And hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, you can hit the like button with your blade, make it wither away, and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Anyhow, back to explaining the ability. Practically speaking, whenever you hit any mob with your sword of any sorts, you can give them a wither effect. You probably wonder why I say of any sorts of sword, because the next ability gives you a sword, but we'll go over that in a brief moment. This wither effect will last roughly 10 seconds of a countdown before it no longer does anything, and then you have to hit the mob again in order for them to get affected with it again. Capiche? Moving into your next ability, you've got the Blade. You've acquired the best sword that you can ever imagine. So as you would have already noticed, there is an iron sword, an enchanted iron sword in my inventory already. Now this sword is enchanted with sharpness 5, smite 5, knockback 2, and looting 3, as well as curse of vanishing. Now when listening that, there was probably around 2 things that stood out to you. First off, the fact that it's got both sharpness and smite on the same sword, which yes, that can be done via mods and weird coding little things, but you can't actually do it in the game normally. So what this does mean is not only do you have the sharpness bonus damage, you also have the smite bonus damage on undead mobs, which overall is extremely useful. This does, however, make a Neverite sword with sharpness 5 stronger overall against all mobs aside from undead mobs, because undead mobs will take the normal amount of damage from your sharpness 5 iron sword plus the smite bonus damage at the same time. Oh, and of course we can't forget about the beautiful wither effect that you also have. Another brilliant choice made by the creator here was to add the curse of vanishing towards the sword. Now of course there is always a way around this by throwing your sword on the ground or putting it in a chest and then dying and getting yourself another one when you respawn, but in the cases and when you die by being killed, the sword will automatically vanish because you do respawn with a new sword every time you die. Anyhow, moving into the next ability, you've got the Master of the Arts. You have perfected the art of blades, making you deal more damage with bladed weapons. This does include both swords and axes with this ability. So going back to my husk measuring ways of using a husk to determine our damage outputs, with all swords you 2-hit a husk on crit damage. With all swords it's a 2-hit damage kill. Without crits, the wooden, stone, gold, and iron sword will do 3 hits to the husk, and the diamond and netherite will all do 2 hits to the husk. Practically speaking, your wooden sword starts off at a default of 4 damage now, all the way up to the scaling of the netherite sword, which starts with a default of 8 damage. Your iron sword that you spawn with has a default of 9 damage, but again, you do have the smite already on there as well, so it does extra damage against undead enemies. Moving on towards your axes, you start off with a wooden axe that does 7 damage, scaling up to a netherite axe that does 10 damage per hit. Just a bit of extra information for those who don't quite know it. Essentially with axes, your attack speed also scales up, going from 1.8 with your wooden axe going to the full-on 1 attack speed when you use a netherite axe, while swords stay at a flat 1.6 attacks per second. Moving on to your next ability, you've got Weird Thought. You can only wear diamond and netherite, all other armors are nothing but trash to you. Yes, you heard that correctly. Instead of being restricted on what armors you can use in the top end of the spectrum, you're actually instead restricted from using the bottom end of the spectrum. And considering that we live in 1.17, this does make it so that A, you can't use your leather boots to avoid the snow damage as much, and B, you can't use gold armor to avoid piglins being insta aggro against you, because you can only wear diamond and netherite, no exceptions. Due to the time that you've spent training, you actually get exhausted faster than normal. First off, that doesn't quite make sense. Probably a better way to describe this ability is saying that, hey, due to all the time you've put into making your arms far stronger and giving you higher strength, you tend to require a lot more energy in order to use your strength, or something along those lines kind of thing. Either way, I digress. The ability is pretty simple to understand. Your hunger just burns a little quicker than normal. Anyhow, moving into the next ability, you've got Not the Best Archer. You didn't learn how to use crossbows and bows, which, if we're realistically, is kind of how Technoblade tends to play. He tends to ignore his bows and crossbows a lot, aside from when he's shooting fireworks. Even in his PvP battle against Dream, he rather focused on trying to close the distance and hitting people with his axe/sword, depending on which version, and only using the crossbow and arrow when it's just extra damage at a distance. But hey, you can still use your trident, so you can still fly around with your Riptide or throw trident for distance damage if necessary. Moving into the next ability, you've got Fearless Warrior. All of these years of mastering the art of swords and axes made you think that shields are only for the weaklings scared to die. AKA, you can't use shields. You just can't use shields. I mean, I don't know how else to say. You just can't use shield, guys. It's a thing, you know? You can't use shields. You can't use anything from a distance aside from tridents. Overall, this is a beautiful melee-based origin, but you lose a lot of things that go with it, but you get a lot of things out of it. Anyhow, what are your thoughts on this origin? Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of it and what origin do you want to see next. I am reading the comments regularly. I will be taking suggestions from the comments, but until next time, guys, I've been Chris Air. Massive thank you to my members, especially my $10 member, Decept, and until next time, guys, goodbye!